Hey, Rosabelle, you're calling me. This is a real shock.
Well, I'm calling you back.
Oh, the truth comes out.
What's up?
I'm calling you for the podcast. Is that okay?
Yes.
But just quickly, you texted before saying you'd eaten too much.
I did eat too much. Now I feel sleepy.
What did you eat?
Just a hodgepodge of different things. I ordered a Korean bowl type thing and it wasn't very good, so then I didn't eat much of it and I snacked on some other things. Don't put this in the podcast.
Okay, so this week's topic is a very broad one. It's about prisons in America. And I just wonder, if I say prisons in America to you, what is the very first thing that comes to mind?
Specifically in America, I guess what comes to mind is what is different to here in Aotearoa, which is like the death sentence and the different ways in which the prison system in America operates.
Is there a bit of pop culture that you were raised with in New Zealand that made you think of prisons?
Well, because we all have to study Shawshank Redemption.
We do. It's a rite of passage for a New Zealand student.
It's a rite of passage.
Why did they choose that? Why did every school choose Shawshank Redemption?
I feel like maybe one teacher chose it and then everyone else was too lazy to change the curriculum.
It had everything, didn't it? It had themes, it had the writing, it had...
metaphors, yeah. It is quite strange that is the one film that so many young people have to learn about.
I'd never thought about that until now, because I either think of Green Mile or Shawshank Redemption, which are both
Well, Green Mile was going to be my other movie.
Both Stephen King adaptations.
He's really led the way on media representation of the prison system, hasn't he?
I'm David Farrier, a New Zealander accidentally marooned in America, and I want to figure out what makes this country tick. Now, as far as I can tell, one of America's main catchphrases is Land of the Free. It's a key phrase in the Star-Spangled Banner, a song so good President Hoover made it the United States' national anthem in 1931. The original line and the whole anthem was penned over 100 years earlier by Francis Scott Key, an American lawyer who also masqueraded as a part-time poet. He was also a massive racist, speaking publicly of black people in America as a distinct and inferior race of people, which all experience proves to be the greatest evil that afflicts a community. What a cool guy to write America's national anthem. Anyway, what's my point? My point is that for a country obsessed with being the land of the free, the United States certainly lacks locking people up in prison. The United States has the largest prison population in the world, with around 1.9 million people incarcerated here. That's made up by about 1 million in state prison, 500,000 in local jails, 200,000 in federal prisons, 30,000 in youth jails, and the rest scattered in other unpleasant places like immigration detention camps and military prisons. To be honest, I've been avoiding this topic because it feels just way too big, and it is way too big, but here we are anyway. So, let's have a conversation about crime, justice, personal liberty, and the Shawshank Redemption, because this is the prisons episode.
Flightless, flightless, flightless bird touchdown in America. I'm a flightless bird touchdown in America.
Rob, how are you? Are you well?
I'm good. I like that this has become the new way of starting
It's just
every
checking
episode.
in. Checking in. America, it's a crazy place. I feel this week maybe a 7 out of 10. I've noticed I've been biting the inside of my mouth. I have that rough inside of the mouth, so I've been nibbling.
What's 10 and what's 1?
10 is like I'm about to go somewhere really exciting and maybe make something, or I'd say holiday, but I actually don't love holidays that much.
Mm-hmm.
A 1 is when
Was it inauguration week?
Inauguration week is pretty low. I'd also say it's like when I wake up at 2 a.m. and I think, oh my God, I'm going to die one day.
Mm-hmm.
That's about a 2.
Okay.
What about you?
I'm about a 4 this week.
For a big week.
Yeah.
Hard
Big
week.
week.
Okay, admin before we get into prisons.
Admin.
We still have tickets for 2 live shows we have coming up. one
Yes.
in Portland and one in San Francisco.
Yes, April 13th at Revolution Hall in Portland.
Yes.
Portland is my favorite city, I will
I
say.
can't wait. They do good coffee, and I will be hoovering it up.
Stephen Smith Tea Maker is out of Portland.
Let's drink all the tea and all the coffee. I support both.
And there's a very amazing restaurant I have not gone to that I want to go to.
Okay. What kind of food?
I think it's Creole food. Will you look up really
Okay.
quick? Kann, Portland.
Kann.
Portland.
Portland. Let's see.
It's this chef Gregory. He was a top
Haitian
chef.
cuisine meets Pacific Northwest bounty.
It's Haitian food.
Okay. Delicious.
But if anyone works there, that listens
This is
to
why
this
you're bringing
show.
it up.
No,
get
it's
that
not
little-
at all.
that
I'm
little,
watching reservations so
Yeah,
that
cool.
I can get in there while we're in town. But that's mostly what I'm excited for. Besides the
support
show
this.
in Portland,
And then San Fran.
April 18th,
Yes.
Palace of Fine Arts Theater, which looks way too nice for us.
I've heard nothing but beautiful things. If you go into the show notes for this episode, there'll be ticket links in there. Go in there, get a ticket. Can't wait to go.
Sounded like you said tickle links.
Tickle links. I mean that too. There's tickle links and there's ticket links. Take your pick which one you want. They're different vibes, but I think like both fun.
Maybe all along you were secretly, what was his name?
David D'Amato.
David D'Amato.
David D'Amato. Look,
Tickle links.
tickle links in the show notes. And we look forward to seeing you there. Now, today's episode, I'm genuinely kind of worried about because
It's a big one.
it's a big one.
It's a heavy subject.
It's too big.
It's a subject that affects a lot of people in not great ways.
Yeah, I would say that the little audio documentary I made is like a sort of meandering all over the place kind of a thing.
But
and
Solves everything.
it solves everything. It solves everything. It's a big in-depth
good.
investigation that solves America's prison population
system.
problem.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm sort of almost hoping that out of this, if anyone's listening and they have any really specific kind of ins to any of the things I touch on, to maybe email me, and I'd like to go deeper in future episodes. So as always, that's flightlessbirdchat@gmail.com. But yeah, I've sort of been gathering little stories over the last year and sort of and little interviews, and I put them all into this one big weird audio doc, including talking to your dad.
Yeah.
Which we did how long ago now?
Yeah, this has been a long time coming. I think we did that in it was before Christmas.
And something weird about this show, I've found the topics I do that come together like very quickly are often the ones that work quite well. And the ones that I take a really long time on just become almost more difficult. Anyway, this is all very boring background in my brain about how I think about this.
Is that because you're procrastinating and give up on ways to
part of it?
Tie up nicely?
Kind of, yeah. And I think like stuff that comes together organically, always, I think you can sense the flow of it in an episode.
Yeah.
And things that are jumping all over the place, it can just get a bit ungainly maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But before we get into this, Rosabelle mentioned studying Shawshank Redemption at school.
Yeah.
Do you remember what film you studied in like English class, or did you not do that in America? Because in New Zealand, in English, maybe when you're 15 or 16, you'll always study a film and you have to write about it. You do projects about it.
Yeah.
And Shawshank was just the thing that was like in every New Zealand school. It was like exam time. And it would be essays about the fucking Shawshank Redemption, which is an incredible film, but we watched it so many times. It was that and Forrest Gump.
What year is this happening in
We're
schooling?
probably 14, 15, 16, that kind of age.
I don't recall there being a movie report.
Was it more, what did you do?
I
like
mean,
a book
there were
report?
I remember educational shows. There was the show Voyage of the Mimi that we watched in 5th grade,
Okay.
which starred a young Ben Affleck
Oh, seriously?
when he was a kid.
Any good?
I remember learning about hypothermia from that, and the fact that you have to get naked and put your bodies together to get warm.
Fair.
And I still reference that anytime Natalie is too cold.
Right. Well, you're like,
I'll say
time to get naked.
we have to get naked and
Jesus.
put our bodies together.
Really good knowledge to take away from that film.
It'll warm you up very quickly. Because they get in a sleeping bag. and
Okay.
warm up.
What's the film about?
It's a show.
Okay.
That's about all I remember from
Okay,
it. There was a boat.
it's a show.
There was a boat.
Okay, and they get naked at
I
some
think
point.
they're on an island.
Okay, so there was no Shawshank Redemption at
No.
school, but I guess when I was thinking with Rosabelle, I was kind of thinking like, how do New Zealanders think about American prisons? And so much of it is through TV. And my references always were Shawshank.
Prison Break?
I was about to say Prison Break was one of the by far trashiest things ever made, but I stand by it. That was good hot trash.
I liked it too. I'd put like True Blood in a similar place.
True Blood had like a bit more class. Like,
no, it didn't.
You don't think it did?
Well, I don't. How much do we want to shit publicly on a?
Oh well, yeah, we're not here to shit, but I mean, that can take it. Also, can I just say, True Blood starred New Zealander Anna Paquin.
I didn't
big
realize she was
hero
New
of.
Zealander.
Actually, is she I'm sure she is. She better not be Australian. I'm just double checking this. Let's see. She's a Canadian-born New Zealand actor. Wow.
I couldn't stop watching it, but
yeah,
also like I don't look back at that being great. But Prison Break was the same. Like
also,
I was really into Prison Break when it came out.
Break, just quickly, just on True Blood, was that Alan Ball who did, I believe, 6 Feet Under? I'm just going to check because 6 Feet Under is my favorite show of all time. Yeah, so he created True Blood and 6 Feet Under.
Wow.
One of the most amazing shows and one of just a very different style.
Yeah.
But Prison Break I loved because the end of every episode was a cliffhanger. And that was unreal.
Do you remember the premise?
He went into prison. He got locked up so he could break his older, bulkier brother out.
Yes.
And he tattooed
Yes, that's the part I wanted
a
to
map
get to.
of the prison on his back and like a very elaborate tattoo that wasn't a map, but it was a map.
Yeah.
That's the gist, right?
Yeah. That's exactly what I remember from it.
And it was on his back. How did he reference the map? Like he looked in a mirror? I can't even remember.
I don't either, but I do remember the tattoos. And
and spoiler alert.
They get out.
But then
they get arrested in like Mexico?
Yeah, and locked up in another prison.
Yeah.
That tattoo is no good in the Mexican jail.
Nope. Was that where you were going with the spoiler alert?
Yeah, locked back up.
Well, I remember by like the second or third season they were out and was just like, okay, this show's called Prison Break. What are they doing?
What are we doing?
What are we doing now with them out?
I also think it's the best cliffhanger. I think it was the end of season 1. They're out and they're just running along, I think, trying to get to a plane and the cops are closing in. And I just remember being like, oh my God, I don't think I can wait for season 2. Like, this is too important. And Wentworth Miller, though, I got very obsessed with Wentworth Miller at the time. He's like incredibly hot.
Which character was that?
He is like the hot brother with the tattoo on the back.
Okay, the main character,
so
not the brother that was locked up.
Not that guy. So Wentworth Miller, I'm doing a lot of Googling in this episode. He directed a really amazing film. I believe it was called Stoker, which is this really beautiful art house film. And I looked at who directed it. It's like, it's fucking Wentworth Miller from Prison Break. Like, what the hell are you doing? I was going to check that it is called Stoker. No, okay, so it gets even more mind-blowing. Wentworth Miller wrote Stoker, and it was directed by Park Chan-wook. It's a fucking incredible director. Who would have thought?
That's like when you find out that Justin Theroux wrote Tropic Thunder.
I didn't know that.
You know Justin
really?
Theroux, right?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, Leftovers, right?
Yeah, he wrote
Tropic Thunder. Which is a very funny but slightly problematic movie in parts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
But I mean, look up what else he wrote. He wrote like he's a great comedy writer.
This isn't
but
the present
also...
episode. This is movie trivia right now. We got to move on to prisons.
Google rabbit hole.
We got to move on to prisons. Stay tuned for more Flightless Bird. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. Support for Flightless Bird comes from Helix. Now, you probably don't need me to tell you this, but sleeping is really important and getting a good night's sleep is really important for both your brain and your body. And what I have loved about getting a Helix mattress is that my body is a lot better. It's in a lot better shape, as is my brain. I've talked about this a lot as well. I have a bad back because I'm a 42-year-old man who has slouched a lot of his life, and the Helix Sleep mattress offers me the support that I need. And that is why I'm really happy to be talking about Helix. Now, all you need to do to get a Helix mattress is to jump online, take their online quiz, and it will match you to a mattress that is the perfect one for you. I heard about Helix Sleep through this podcast. They were one of the sponsors. I was in America. I didn't have a good mattress, and so I logged into the site. I chose the mattress I wanted, or rather it chose me after I told them about my sleeping patterns, and then it arrived at my front door. And good God, I haven't looked back. I'm used to traveling a lot and I've slept on a lot of different beds. And so I feel like I know a good one when I feel one. And Helix is really bloody good. So go to helixsleep.com/bird for 20% off site-wide. That's helixsleep.com/bird for 20% off site-wide. helixsleep.com/bird. Support for Flightless Bird comes from Bombas. Now, what if I told you the most important part of your spring cleaning routine is your sock drawer? You heard that right, and I think a lot of people don't talk about the sock drawer, but it's very, very important. Look in there, it's probably going to be a mess. There are probably some socks missing, there are things mismatched, and it's time for you to sort this out. Basically, it's time to refresh your collection with some fresh Bombas, which is exactly what I have done. And no matter what kind of socks you want, Bombas is there for you. Ready to unlock your new running hobby? Well, Bombas is there for you with their engineered, blister-fighting, wonderful socks. Maybe you've got a wedding coming up and you need a really nice pair of socks. Bombas dress socks are there for you, and they're made for loafers, heels, and all of your other fancy shoes because you have to stay comfortable when you're dancing on that big, randy wedding dance floor. Plus, you know what goes great with new spring socks? Fresh white t-shirts, waterproof sides, and a few pairs of buttery soft underwear. Bombas makes all of that too. And the best part of this? For every comfy pair you purchase, Bombas donates another comfy pair to somebody facing homelessness. For the last probably month and a half, I have been wearing nothing but Bombas socks, and I love them. They feel good, and they look good, and I highly, highly recommend them to you. Plus, Bombas is going international. Enjoy worldwide shipping to over 200 countries. Head over to bombas.com/bird and use code BIRD for 20% off your first purchase. That's BOMBAS.com/bird. Code BIRD for 20% off your first purchase. Bombas.com/bird and use the code BIRD. I think we should just play the documentary and then discuss things afterwards. What do you think?
That sounds great.
Okay. I wanted to start this episode by calling someone really important. And for this particular call, I'd need Rob's phone.
Hello?
Hello, it's David here. I work with your son, Rob.
And you use his phone?
Yeah, I just wanted to give you a surprise. I just wanted to make sure you weren't going to ignore me.
Glad to meet you.
How are you doing?
Good, thanks. Enjoy your podcasts.
He kind of had to say that because his son was listening, but I'll take the compliment anyway. I'm calling Rob's dad, Greg, because he volunteers at his local prison, helping prisoners with their rehab just by getting them to open up a little bit.
The big events are 3-day retreats, and we'll go in with maybe 25 volunteers to an audience of 35 to 45 residents, and basically lead discussions on a pretty wide range of topics and get them involved. A lot of it is based on personal experience in whatever the talk may deal with. Some is forgiving yourself, forgiving others.
I'm curious what you think one of the biggest misconceptions might be about prisons, or maybe perhaps about prisoners, the people you encounter. I know that's a very broad question.
I know there's fights. I know there's, sometimes there's a lockdown because of a fight that prevents us from going in, but it's not a bunch of hoodlums that are looking to do damage to anybody and everybody. And that, I'd say, would be the biggest misconception, that people would fear that it's that. I mean, they're human beings and unbelievably candid.
As I said, I wanted to check in with Rob's dad because I was curious to learn more about the American prison system. And frankly, I just didn't know where to start. The US has the largest prison population in the world, almost 2 million prisoners. From what I could tell, America gets its rocks off by locking people up and metaphorically throwing away the key. A piece in Vox last year noted that America's prison system is turning into a de facto nursing home. In 2020, there were 166,000 prisoners 55 and older. By 2022, it was 186,000.
In the United States, we have the highest incarceration rate in the world. We have 4% of the world's population and 20% of the world's prison population. And so in our country, we really like to criminalize people, arrest people, and put them in jail, and then often sentence them, sometimes for really minor crimes, sometimes for obviously more aggressive crimes, but either way for excessively long times.
I'm talking to Bianca Tylek, the founder of national advocacy group Worth Rises. To state what you can probably already guess, she doesn't like the way America does incarceration. She says Worth Rises exists to end the financial incentives to keep people locked up, and in doing so, end the exploitation of prisoners. Coming at it devil's advocate for a second, isn't that great? You know, America, they're not going to let people run rampant. They've got the situation under control. There's consequences for your actions. What's the issue?
We're not the safest country in the world. We're not even near the top. Right? And so we incarcerate a tremendous number of people because we really don't believe in liberty and freedom in the way that we claim to. And we have nothing to show for it. There are many, many countries across the world, that are safer than we are. And so there's nothing about our carceral system that is producing the results that we would intend it to if we say we want a justice system.
Again, very broad, complicated question to answer, but how did we get to this point in America? Why has this become this country's obsession?
So the carceral boom started really in the 1970s, right? That was when we went from a much more modest number of people who were incarcerated to this exponential growth over the last, let's say, 50 years or so, where we have seen the prison population increase by hundreds of %, right? We saw the peak actually happen in 2009, so thankfully we are seeing a little bit of a decline, but we're still at really, really aggressive and extensive levels. And so, where did this come from? It came from a number of things. I mean, many would say that in the 1970s is when we started the war on drugs.
For the sake of our children, for the sake of all the magnificent accomplishments of the American past, today I ask for your support and the support of our people in this effort to fight the drug menace, to eradicate the cancers of organized crime and public corruption, to make our streets and houses safe again, and to return America to the days of respect for the law and the rights of the innocent. Thank you very much.
Then, we, in the 1990s, we had sort of the tough on crime era when we passed the 1993-94 crime bill that included mandatory minimums and 3-strike laws and truth in sentencing, all of which dramatically increased the number of people who are incarcerated, so much so that the federal government, to incentivize other states to take on some of these same laws that the federal system was passing, offered funding to states to build more prisons and jails because they knew that that would be the outcome. And so since then, we continue to maintain the largest prison population in the world. And as I said, with little to show for it. And obviously, this is a system that is deeply embedded or dependent on issues of class, issues of race, issues of gender, right? All of sort of our social failures around racism, classism, poverty, loss of education, loss of job opportunities manifest themselves in a prison population.
Is the other difficulty in America just the fact that, it's these 50 different states? I mean, you literally have some states that support the death penalty, others that don't, some that have liberal leadership, some that don't. Does that sort of make it a bit of a unique nightmare to sort of reach some kind of consensus?
Absolutely. I mean, we're a country that deeply believes in state rights. And And what that means is that every state, plus the federal system, right, gets to have its own laws, which makes everything about enforcement very hard because, what's a crime 10 feet away may not be a crime, 100 feet down the other street, right? Or the penalty for that same crime might vary really wildly.
She's not talking literally 100 feet down the road, but about things like abortion, legal in some states, a crime in others.
So we have a $80+ billion industry in the U.S. that is sort of built around prisons and jails. And I think if we were to say, and that is uniquely American to start because we have, the capitalist sort of mindset and experiment that we're absolutely dedicated to under every single circumstance, okay? Except for, I always sort of joke that, Americans are capitalists until somebody starts selling drugs. Americans are capitalists until somebody starts selling sex, right? Americans are capitalists until they start doing something that are prude, and conservative family values say, wait, hold on, you can't make money doing that. And I'm like, well, then in that case, maybe there are other things we shouldn't make money doing, and one of them should be putting people in cages.
There are lots of examples of companies making money off both public and private prisons. I think of another project I worked on ages ago where I was emailing back and forth with someone in a Florida prison. To communicate with them, I had to use an internal email system called JPay. Each message I sent cost money. 1.5 million prisoners use JPay. Prisons get kickbacks for using it. Then I think of another side hustle like the bail bonds industry, which we spent a whole episode of Flightless Bird on a few years ago.
We are one of only 2 countries in the world that has a commercial bail bonds industry. And, when we think of that as just one example of the sort of, crazy ways that we allow industry to infiltrate our quote unquote justice system, which is anything but just, we have an industry that preys on having people incarcerated so that they can pay to sort of get them out and charge people, astronomical rates to do so.
With all this talk of incarceration, I wanted to get a better idea of what it's like to be inside. I've been working on another episode of Flightless Bird about the unhoused population in LA, and I've been talking to a guy called Jared Klickstein. He spent a lot of his life homeless and addicted to heroin. He wrote an amazing book, which I highly recommend, called Crooked Smile. Anyway, I realized Jared had spent 6 months in one of LA's main jails. Now free and sober, he agreed to meet with me outside.
I'm here at the Men's Central Jail at Twin Towers, and I've walked by, I guess, a few times, but I really haven't been here since 2016.
Twin Towers reminds me of all the jails I've ever seen in America. Nondescript, off-white, tiny slit windows, a total lack of humanity almost. It's like someone was rendering a video game world and forgot to do this bit.
I lived on Skid Row, so I go back to Skid Row all the time, and that's probably more strange because the majority of the time I spent here was not looking at the exit door. So it's I've only seen it a few times.
Because we're in LA, this jail has seen its fair share of celebrity inmates. The Game, Robert Durst, Danny Masterson, they've all spent at least a few days in here.
I went in here for 6 months, and it scared the hell out of me. And unfortunately, jail doesn't help most people. I'm kind of a unique situation where it did help me. Because a lot of people go in there, and they're sort of geared towards, oh, I'll just do this. I'll just be a jail guy for the rest of my life. And they actually find camaraderie, and they find acceptance, and they actually learn how to refine their criminality in there. And I didn't do that. I got really scared, and I had to join a gang and saw violence, and it was terrifying.
What gang did you join in there?
The Peckerwoods, which if you're not a Nazi but you're white, you have to join the Peckerwoods. Everyone just joins the Peckerwoods if you're a white guy. And I don't think it's really a super active street gang. It's really just a prison gang. And you have to join. It's not like I actively joined this gang. You are just automatically, come into the dorm and they take you to the shot collar and that's it. And most people in there were just a bunch of idiots that were on meth or alcoholics or something. I mean, literally the majority of people in there were drug addicts or alcoholics. That's the bottom line.
This is a really hack question, but what was the scariest thing that happened in there?
There was a race riot in there while I was in there, and It's because a Mexican gentleman gave a face tattoo to a white gentleman, and the white gentleman did not think it was a quality tattoo and started saying, I don't think your tattoo skills are very good. And then they started fighting, and when two people start fighting, everyone from each gang has to join into the fight. And I was hanging out with my Mexican friends at the time, making some lunch, and I was surrounded by my Mexican friends, and then this race war kicks off, and I'm like surrounded by 3 people from the opposing gang. And but we had discussed this before, like, hey, what if there ever was something? Then they were like, oh, we'll just hit you a few times, and then you just like kind of roll out of the way. And they're like, we don't care, we don't dislike you, we're not gonna like beat the hell out of you or anything. But I did get very scared, and I was like, is this gonna get crazy? Because we were like highly outnumbered. And no, we just looked at them. I gave them a little nod. They gave me a little nod. They gave me some light punches, and I just rolled off into the corner and then avoided the race war. But I got very scared in the moment where I was like, is my head gonna get stomped in? But it didn't. And so, yeah, that turned out pretty good, actually.
Fucking hell. Stay tuned for more Flightless Bird. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. Flightless Bird is brought to you by Symbiotica. Now, living healthy looks different to everyone. For me at the moment, it's trying to get 8 hours sleep a night. Easier said than done. It's doing exercise, makes me very sweaty, and just generally trying not to get too stressed out by things. And yeah, Symbiotica also keeps me living healthily. Over the last week, I've been using a bunch of Symbiotica's stuff, like their magnesium L-threonate, which helps support focus and mood. Friends had been telling me about the importance of magnesium for ages, but I was ignoring them, and now here I am trying it finally, and yeah, it's a good thing. It comes in a little packet with liquid inside that tastes very yummy when you suck it back, and God, vanilla cream flavor is the one for me. Symbiotica helps you maintain healthy habits all year long, no matter what your goals are, supporting everything from your energy, digestion, immune system, and mood. The travel-sized packets are great for me as I actually remember to use them each day, and yeah, as the name suggests, they're really easy to travel with. It's one of the easiest things I've done for my health. Symbiotica is one of the most trustworthy brands out there. They never compromise on quality and sourcing. Their products are free from seed oils, preservatives, toxins, or artificial additives. It's something you can taste and feel in every packet. I'm excited to be starting my journey with Symbiotica, and I worked out an awesome offer for my listeners so you can try their products too. Go to symbiotica.com/bird for 20% off plus free shipping. That's symbiotica.com/bird to claim 20% off plus free shipping today. Overall, Jared got off light. From what I can tell, Twin Towers Jail is maybe less hectic than a lot of America's prisons, where people are locked up for much longer sentences. Bianca had reminded me of some of the truly nightmarish destinations people end up in.
I mean, if you go down to Alabama, to Mississippi, and not just there, even up in New York and in California, these prisons are grotesque. I mean, we have facilities infested with, rodents and insects. We have food that's being delivered to people who are incarcerated that have like rodent body parts or feces in them. We, have mildew, and we have places in Pennsylvania, for example, where people are getting sick from like toxic water. A huge number of prisons in our country are actually built next to toxic land sites that otherwise like housing can't be built on. You have facilities that are fully falling apart. In Texas, where the temperatures can easily reach 120, 130 degrees, you have people dying inside because there's no air conditioning, and you can't survive in that type of heat if you have, conditions. Like, there's just no way you could refer to this system and suggest that it is any type of luxury. Even in, the newest facility. And I always think, some of these construction and architecture companies that build these prisons, they'll say things like, oh, so much light is being let in by the white paint on the walls. Like, what does that mean? Are you in, what?
So far, I'd mostly been talking public prisons, where over 90% of America's prisoners are housed. But around 8% find themselves in privately funded operated facilities. I wondered if they were much better. Robert Craig doesn't seem to think so. He's the Associate Director of Abolish Private Prisons. His group is sort of amazing. They're a nonprofit that uses the court system against private prisons. They file multiple cases in federal courts across the country. Their ultimate aim to prove that profiting off the backs of prisoners violates the United States Constitution.
As you've stated, you look in a public prison, these are not great spaces, right? And for a private company to come in and say, we're going to do this in a way that's cheaper than the public can do it, right? Because that's the only way it makes sense as a private business, is they have to be able to create some profit margin. So like they're going to have to be able to create a system that runs more cheaply than what's already a very, very bare bones system. So they have to figure out some way to do that. And it's hard to imagine them being able to create better physical spaces when they have this financial necessity to create a profit margin on already, something that's run at a razor thin margin level. We're not taking the position that government has to operate in everything, right? There's clearly some spaces where there's opportunities for private companies to be more flexible, and change things around very quickly and innovate and all of that stuff. We have no problem when private companies are getting contracts to build roads or, things of this nature. The real fundamental problem here is when a person's liberty is at stake. There's sort of two different avenues to think about it. One is sort of like a moral philosophical position, is that like when it comes to taking away someone's liberty, only the government sort of has the moral authority to do that. And, a private company having just the ability to profit off the fact that somebody else is incarcerated, it just has this like philosophical problem. There's also a functional problem, which is that when the corporations have a financial interest in keeping their beds full, and every person that's in there, they're making more money, they have this financial interest to work in the legislative space and the advocacy space against sort of common sense criminal justice reform. And so they're always going to be pushing for the kinds of things that make them more money. And so at its core is they have this vested financial interest that's at odds with individuals' liberty.
To be honest, at this point, I was still finding it hard to wrap my head around the different types of American prisons. Jails versus prisons, public versus private. It was just a little messy in my mind. So I went down to San Diego to meet someone who's actually emailed us about this topic a while back.
My name is Alana McMains. I'm an attorney. I primarily focus on federal criminal defense.
She'd arranged to have me go inside a prison called the GEO Western Region Detention Facility.
So in the United States, we have two parallel criminal justice systems. We have the state system. Most crimes are charged by the state, things like murders, DUIs, robbery, the kind of things we normally think of when we think of crime. There is also the federal system, and I represent indigent clients who are charged with federal crimes. So being here in San Diego, border city, we're typically talking about border-related crimes, so importing fentanyl, bad hombres crossing the border, as Trump would say. Those are all my favorite people who I help. What I'm mainly doing is presenting mitigating factors to a judge and explaining why this person, whether due to poverty, sexual abuse, drug addiction, etc., why 8 years is not necessary for this woman. How about 3 years, or how about probation as opposed to 6 months, depending on the severity of the crime.
Why is America so obsessed with incarceration as opposed to prevention? Because it does just end up being so expensive as well. It's expensive to keep people in prisons.
Yeah, in law school, you're taught about the various purposes of a criminal justice system. And, there's rehabilitation. There is basically keeping people off the streets and away from people, just literally protecting the public. And one of the options, of course, is retribution. And I think, unfortunately, our criminal justice system is really heavy on the retribution and doesn't really focus on the others. Rehabilitation is just a joke. The type of programs that are available to people, it's minimal. There's very little funding. We are not sending people out better than they were. People are coming out, I think, traumatized. They're coming out often victims of sexual abuse or physical violence. They're coming out of prison having probably developed a lot of new criminal skills and criminal friends. Overall, it's, even if you're just thinking not about the people themselves, but thinking about society and what's best for, us, the law-abiding people, I don't think prison is achieving that.
Today, Alana has agreed to take me into a private prison to visit one of her clients who I'll call Jeff. They'd been caught, allegedly, with a bunch of drugs in their car near the border. They're awaiting trial, but if found guilty, could go away for up to 15 years. I've never been inside an American prison before, so I was curious about the experience. I got off to a bad start.
Yeah, so first off, there was a sort of an outfit disaster that I had. Can you just explain what went on there?
Well, it appeared that you thought that the appropriate prison outfit should be a 9-inch nail shirt and a pair of, I don't know if those were swim trunks. What was going on?
That's not going to fly.
No, technically they don't. Knees are considered very scandalous in the prison world. Shorts are a no-go. Tight yoga pants, I've gotten in trouble for wearing like legging type things. Underwire and bras is a constant problem. I've heard stories of women who went to visit clients at like faraway prisons out in the boondocks and were rejected for their bra, but you can't go in with no bra either, so they had to like drive and find a Walmart and just buy a sports bra.
Luckily, I did have some clothes in the car. You never know when you might need to look fancy. So I swapped out my shorts and 9-inch nails t-shirt for some long pants and a shirt. It ended up being a short 10-minute walk from her office to the prison.
I still look a bit unkempt, but I'm going to get away with it because everything's covered. Everything's covered now.
Yes. No one will be riled up by your sexiness.
Okay, this is good. Who are we going to see?
So we're going to visit a client who is in custody on drug charges. His is kind of a sad case where he was charged by the state and they had come up with a deal for about 3 years custody. And then for some reason, the feds decided to pick him up. They arrested him in the state courthouse and now are charging him using the 10-year mandatory minimum.
What have you told him? You said you've got the worst kind of person, a podcaster, coming in to say hello. What have you said?
I told him that you are not from the United States and you are fascinated by our bizarre ways and you want to learn about the prison system here. And because he does have a prior, I think like a DUI or something, he spent a little bit of time in probably a county lockup and now he's in a federal facility. The place we're going to actually is a private facility. This is not a federal Department of Justice. This is the GEO group. The two big private prisons are Core Civic, previously known as Corrections Corp of America, but they rebranded to sound nicer. Core Civic sounds like they're,
Such a generic name. I wonder how much that was workshopped through.
Yeah, well, you should see the videos on their website when they change the name about all the civic duty and glory that they're bringing to our great nation. But the other one is the GEO group. So when there was an attempt by Obama to say we're not going to use private prisons anymore in the federal system, obviously he can't control the states, and Trump rescinded that. But even when that was in effect, there was still an agreement that for pretrial detainees, they could use them because I think there's just not enough space in the pretrial facilities.
It had taken months for Alana to organize me joining her in here. And just before we went inside, I had a moment of panic.
Who does the court think I am?
The court believes you're a journalist named David Farrier, so I hope that that's true.
We're
so
not
I
lying.
haven't perjured myself.
Okay, I'm just checking that I don't need to have a cover or something.
No, you're absolutely, we're above board here.
And I assume I can't take this recording device in, or can I sneak it in?
I do not believe so.
I guess we'll find out.
Yeah.
We check in with the guard, then go through a metal detector. I get a stamp on my hand, just like I'm going into a concert. Weirdly, I can't see any marking and wonder if it's out of ink. I think for a moment I'm going to be able to record inside, but no.
No, okay, we can put that in the locker.
Okay, just a laptop.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, so sorry.
No worries. Okay, no recording devices. That's okay. We'll
It's like a
this
security
one in the
blanket saying
locker.
goodbye.
It is. Goodbye, recorder.
Recording gear, phone, wallet and key stored in a locker. We wait for about 20 minutes before they fetch a client. We sit in a narrow, unglamorous corridor before being called in. Then it's more corridors, and I scan my hand under a sensor. It turns out the stamp was infrared. We buzz through one door, then that door locks behind us and another door opens. We're directed to a room where we sit and wait for Jeff. When he enters, he's uncuffed and in prison scrubs. I've never visited anyone in prison before. We have our own private room, it's just us. A million TV shows and true crime podcasts flood into my head because that's my only point of reference. We talk to Jeff for about 30 minutes. That's mostly me asking dumb questions, but there's also some time where Alana discusses the case. I'm not sure what I expected, but Jeff is polite, informed, and really funny. He's missing his girlfriend and his kid. He's aware he fucked up. Now he's just waiting for his court date. Towards the end, the walls do feel like they're closing in, and by the time we're outside, I'm glad. And the life he described inside, well, I don't think I'd last more than 20 seconds.
I was really surprised at I guess I shouldn't have been surprised about the beatings that go on for, what was it called?
Oh, yeah, when he was talking about regulating. Yeah, unfortunately, that's another thing that I've just been kind of aware of through clients.
Jeff had talked about the hierarchy inside and how if people didn't do the right thing, they'd get regulated. Set prisoners carry out regulations, and for set amounts of time. It's like a kind of internal justice system among prisoners. I was also really surprised to learn that prisons are separated by race. Blacks are in one area, Mexicans in another, whites in another. I remember the story Greg had told me about the race war he got caught up in.
There's just a lot of problems with violence in the facilities, and I think they attempt to minimize it by having this racial segregation, which is so bizarre.
Learning about the way races are literally segregated out, that surprised me.
So that's something that's been going on in California, for a very long time, I think always, and it is a weird situation where, like I said, if you did that at a university or something, there would be lawsuits aplenty. But
the one place you can.
Yeah, and in fact, it does seem like everyone I've talked to appreciates that and likes it, and they're not racist or anything, right? But for whatever reason, it seems to keep the peace and gives a sense of order to people. I don't know. Again, I will often hear people say like what he said, where like, I myself, I have a couple black friends, even though I'm Mexican, or yeah, I'm friends with one of the Peckerwoods, that's what they call the white guys sometimes, he's not really a Nazi, he just has to hang out with the white people, even though some of them are neo-Nazis, he's not. And so we kind of sometimes chat when we work at the kitchen together, right? So there's these sort of like secret friendships cross-racially, but for the most part, yeah, it's odd. And there's also problems, though, when people get classified into the wrong area. There was a recent lawsuit where someone got misclassified and they were put in a pod. This was like somebody who had like a shoplifting, non-violent financial crime, and they were placed in a pod with people who were facing murder charges, were going down for life, sexually violent predators, and this guy was sexually abused and beaten, and he sent 5 or 6 requests saying, please move me, I don't belong here, this is a mistake. I believe he was Middle Eastern. And so that falls in that other category, again, because they don't know.
Other is a category.
Other is a category, exactly. White, black, Mexican, and other is how it's done in the system. And so I think when it's unclear, they sometimes put people and they don't know what to do with them. And it's just so odd.
Another thing that surprised me, handball is really popular inside, and it gets you places. As in, Jeff told me he was really good at handball, and that ended up really helping him in there. It got him status.
Handball was the thing that got him into that number 2 position in there, running things. That's kind of amazing.
These skills, if you're good at things like dice and dominoes and handball, there's various things that can get you hooked up.
He also seemed like, I don't know what I was expecting. He seemed incredibly calm for someone that was like living quite an exciting life. He's suddenly looking at 5 or 10 years. He seemed super calm about it all. Do you get clients as well who are just like really fucking angry or bitter, or he seemed incredibly chilled out?
I would say that for any client facing serious time, it's a roller coaster of emotions. So he's not always super chill. Not that he's never expressed anger with me at the system and why this is happening and how things are going. People express sadness. I have a client who tells me he feels like he's falling down a hole, endless, with a noose around his neck, and he's just waiting. I hear really dark things sometimes, and yeah, you see anger, but I do think that it really does become your reality, just like we all have this wild ability to adapt.
America's obsession with locking people up does scare me. At its extreme is capital punishment, but in between being free and that, there's just such a wide range of unpleasantness. Yes, society needs justice and it needs accountability, but I'm not sure America's approach is it. A law professor in New Zealand I admire, Kylie Quince, points out that the justice system can't address inequality and is ill-equipped to effectively help people with substance abuse or mental health issues. It's an ambulance at the bottom of the cliff in a system where the fence at the top is broken. Anyway, as I wrap this little audio documentary up, I had one last question, an important one, for Rob's dad. I'm curious what it's like to have Rob as a son. What would you say about him as a person? You created him. What do you think of the result?
He is full of surprises, very intelligent, very liberal-minded, which compared to some of my kids, I really appreciate.
Really threw them under the bus. No, I love it. And are there any personality traits that you think Rob could improve on, do you think? Is there any room for improvement?
Yeah, he could probably go a little easier on joking with his mom when she doesn't know it's a joke.
Suddenly Rob's mum wanders into the background. I think she's been pretending she doesn't want to be a part of this, but secretly she does. I know that Rob sometimes plays tricks on you, I've just heard as well. He does that to me all the time, and I find it incredibly frustrating and annoying, and so I just want to say I'm with you.
Irritating.
He is one of the most irritating men I've ever met. Also lovely and wonderful. And with that compliment hanging in the air, back to the studio. We traversed a lot of ground in
You
there.
did.
Irritating is a word hanging in the air from your mother that I just want to address briefly.
Yeah, this was months ago.
This was months ago. It was just really nice to be able to talk to your mum a little bit about what it's like being in the same space as you. And I'm amazed because I've known you now for probably almost 4 years. And your jokes and your deadpan still get me pretty much every time we hang out, which is so annoying because deadpan is New Zealanders' main thing. And so I should be able to tell.
You would get it.
I'm just a fucking idiot. Like every time I'm like, really? And you're like, no.
You do remind me a lot of my mom.
I don't know if I want to proceed on with this conversation. In what way? Just nice people, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Trusting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like your mum.
Me too.
Prisons.
Prisons,
jails, different thing. I got confused by them all the time. Jail, more short-term. Prisons, long-term, federal.
Did you ever see the show The Night Of? It's at HBO with Riz Ahmed.
Yeah, I did, but I have no recollection of what it was about.
That show is like my nightmare. He gets put in jail for something he didn't do.
Oh, right.
And then it's him trying to deal with that. But then you also watch this progression of him like having to double down and just kind of...
just adapt.
He had to adapt to the situation.
Yeah.
And it's incredibly dark and bleak, and seeing this like innocent, sweet boy just get chewed up by the prison system.
Yeah, after talking to Jeff briefly, like that was his first like sort of like long stay in there. Like he'd basically got caught allegedly bringing a lot of drugs into America. So that was for him a big one. And he just said, yeah, just life in there, it just sounds like it would end me in about 5 minutes probably.
Yeah, I feel the same way. How claustrophobic and...
It was claustrophobic. Yeah, you felt the walls coming in. And I mean, we were just visiting, right? But it's just the lack of windows. It's everything being so close and inward and just no space.
Well, and you're just locked in somewhere, even as a visitor.
Yeah, and he had a kid, and he was talking about how some days he would get up and just want to not be there, like not want to be alive. Other days he'd be like, I've got to try and figure out how to do as best as I can with this case. But actually, Alana wrote, literally about a week ago, with an update, because I recorded that now, it would have been maybe 4 months ago. I just wanted to give you another update on Jeff. Ever since Trump took over, the U.S. attorney is charging way more illegal entry cases, basically Mexicans crossing the border unlawfully. During Democratic administrations, they usually focus on only prosecuting people who had criminal convictions in the US and are trying to sneak back in after a deportation. But under this new administration, they've charged people with no criminal record and even those who are trying to cross the border for the first time ever. So most of these end up as misdemeanors for the person spending a few days or a couple of weeks in jail. So with all these new prosecutions, the federal detention facilities are getting super crowded. So they're shipping away a lot of defendants who have pleaded guilty and are just awaiting a sentencing date. Jeff got sent to I hope I'm saying this right, St. Louis, Luis?
Yeah, that's St. Louis.
St. Louis, AZ? Is that Arizona?
Arizona, AZ?
Arizona. This is a 4-hour drive from here, making it super difficult for me to visit him and even harder for family visits. It also sucks because obviously people get comfortable in the institutions they're at. He's a good example of someone who had adapted and made social connections, even in that crazy environment. Now he has to start completely over with less attorney access and family access. I have multiple clients in this situation right now, and it really sucks. I can't say anything to even like wrap my head around any of this. It's just, in my mind, America, always sitting in the back of my head is that really high incarceration rate. It's the nightmare thing to happen, and a lot of people are living it. And obviously, have to be consequences for certain things.
Yeah.
But the system here obviously like sucks a lot of people in, and there's not a lot of help before people get there, let alone rehabilitating them so they don't go back.
The recidivism rates once you come out, like once you're in that system, like how much more likely you are to return to it.
Yeah, just statistically, society is basically going, no, you're going to be back in here.
Well, and the fact that there are privatized prisons and like there's people making money off of keeping you in prison.
Yeah.
And keeping you from getting better. Like the fact that there are potentially people gaining from it also seems not great.
No, not great at all. And that is, even just thinking of the people working in those private funded prisons, right? Like you go into work every day for your job to exist. Those people have to stay in there. Like they have to be, you have to always have clients. You don't want everyone to get better and get out. So
like they said in the doc, they try to keep the beds full. So, I mean, you would hope that there wasn't anything shady going on.
You would hope so.
That would be keeping people unjustly there. And I don't know that there's a lot of hope or trust that that's not the case.
Even in macro ways, just that whole mentality of working in a private prison, your whole existence is based on people, those beds being full. Just in macro ways, it's not going to exactly sort of make you think, yay, I want all these people to be on, out and free. And that's going to change the way you treat them, and it'll change so much within that system. Yeah. Did anything else jump out at you from that? I mean, obviously, just hearing about the conditions in certain prisons is always terrifying because there's not the funding to actually make them humane in so many ways.
Yeah, I mean, the violence within it in the system is scary. And just kind of the race divide within it as well, that you're kind of just forced into these buckets.
That was, I mean, it might have been naive, but I had no idea that prisoners were a split in that way.
I knew that existed in prisons, but I didn't realize it was like the prisons organizing it in that way.
Yeah.
And that you were just put in your group based on that.
And the regular beatings that would take place, like if you didn't fit in with that internal justice system, it would be basically like it is a minute solid beating if this happens, or it is 2 minutes solid if this happens. And obviously when that's going on, guards are, not there, and it's just unfolding and just, pretty horrific. Yeah, I mean, I'm curious sort of about specific stories within the prison and sort of jail system in America. So if you have any specific sort of ins or ideas, it's just flightlessbirdchat@gmail.com. I feel like there are a million stories to be told, and I'd like to kind of hone in on something super specific to learn a bit more about it. And so, if you have any sort of response to this episode, would love to hear from you. Feedback. Appreciate everyone that is writing in. I guess this kind of slightly ties into the whole idea of crime and punishment, but I had mentioned a while ago now that a car had driven by and offered me some beautiful audiovisual equipment for a price in cash money. Tom wrote in from Vancouver. David, you nearly got duped by a famous scam, the white van scam.
Was it him in the white van?
This is the guy that was trying to scam me.
Almost got you.
It's a very common scam, and the speakers are not stolen. It's just extremely cheap and junky. The scam is in the website that the QR code they give you directs to. It's a fake site. So very specifically, what made me think this is legit is he said, scan the QR code on the box. It'll show you the price. And I scanned it, and it took me to what I thought was a really authentic site. It was all bullshit.
BestBuy.com.
It looked like a BestBuy.com. Anyway, the fact is, apparently everyone knows about the scam, except me. It's even got a Wikipedia page, the white van speaker scam.
I wasn't aware of this, so.
And I really liked how he ended this email to me saying, I have a funny story about a guy who I know who fell for it. He's dopey and clearly identified as an easy mark, which is probably exactly what I was.
Yeah, were you strolling down the street?
I was strolling. Yeah, shorts, t-shirt, looking like I normally look.
Just kind of that angry stomp.
The stomp.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he pulled over, and I took my headphones out, and he said, come over here.
Yeah.
And it was about,
you look like you like speakers.
And I was excited by it. I was like a bargain. Like, this could be my big money maker. I get these speakers, I sell them, rich. But I didn't fall for it. I backed away at the last moment. Emily wrote, she was our live show in Seattle, and she has a lovely story. I came to your live show in Seattle and was delighted that you decided to visit our city. I went to the show by myself and ended up chatting with another woman at the bar who was there alone too. Instantly, I was thrilled to finally have someone to gab to about a podcast I've spent so much time listening to. And we chatted. As we got closer to the show, I went to grab a second drink when a cute guy caught my eye. That's where it gets horny. We shared a few words, and that was that. I went back to Bethany, my new friend, and shared my saga, asking her to help me back up the courage to slide him my number. Bethany... It's so funny. Bethany was the ultimate hype girl and helped me look for a pen and strategize. Well, dear reader, I was able to slip that guy my number. Not only that, he texted me and we went on a date.
Wow.
And we're currently planning our second. How good is that?
We might have our first Flightless Bird baby on
I think
the way.
we might. I think wedding, babies. I mean, I'm just excited by a second date.
I think if they get married, we have to go to the wedding.
I think we absolutely, if we're not invited to that wedding.
Yeah.
And I do want to do an episode about ridiculous American weddings.
And if they have a baby,
yes,
you'll do the umbilical cord circumcision part 2 episode if it's a boy.
That's a great idea.
And cut the umbilical cord.
I'll cut the umbilical cord and encourage them
the
not
boy.
to circumcise the child. So, Emily, I'm really happy for you. I'm glad you made a friend, and I'm glad you met a boy. That's so nice. And if anything goes wrong with the relationship, I take no responsibility.
Keep us updated on the relationship, though.
Yeah, please do. Crystal wrote in about the fake seizure guy episode, still getting a lot of local sort of fake seizure guys.
Oh.
Really love this one. The Duluth ball slasher. There's a gentleman, which sounds more awful than it is. This gentleman whose whole deal is stabbing big yoga balls. He got his start back in 2005, 20 years ago.
Wait, what's a yoga ball?
Those massive balls that you sit in and roll around on.
Like a medicine ball?
A medicine ball.
Okay, I didn't realize that they were specifically for yoga.
We call them yoga balls in New Zealand. Maybe it's not so much done here. He's done a bit of time for it, apparently.
Time for slashing balls?
But he's destroyed hundreds of yoga balls. It's always fun to get a text message from an uncle or friend saying the ball slasher is at it again. There you go.
He's just like hitting up yoga studios.
Just yoga studios, offices.
With like a pair of sharp scissors.
I don't have any more details, actually. But if you know more, write in. I'm fascinated by this man.
Hopefully this doesn't encourage any copycats either.
That would be horrific to yoga balls the world over. In my old newsroom, we went through a phase of everyone sitting on yoga balls because apparently for a while chairs weren't good for your posture. So everyone was like sitting on a yoga ball.
I could see that for
like
you.
This. Yeah.
We should do an episode where we switch out your chair for a yoga ball.
I find like posture in this chair like quite bad. I'm always like slumping, so I would be into a yoga
it would
ball.
be great for the camera if you were always just
slowly like
bouncing.
just gyrating.
Yeah.
And like the shot is from here up, so I'm just like no one sees what I'm doing. So yeah, as always, thanks for writing in. As always, flightlessbirdchat@gmail.com. Live shows in Portland and San Francisco very soon. They're in the show notes. Get your tickets before they all disappear. If you have any ideas on amazing topics for those shows or things you'd like us to investigate in those cities, again, email us, flightlessbirdchat@gmail.com.
If you're a taxidermist in either of those cities, we'd love to borrow some birds.
We want your birds. We want them on stage because a key thing of a Flightless Bird show is having birds on stage with us.
I mean, we're going to be fucked if we can't find...
We'll cancel the show. If we don't have Flightless Bird, like, we're not doing it. And, like, we can't fly with, like, our local birds. That would be way too chaotic.
It's going to send Calvin out with a net in these cities.
Catch these birds, just release them into the auditorium, but then they're not flightless. That's the trouble. They've got to be dead. Thanks for listening. We will see you next week. See you then.